These big magnetic anomalies are indicative of magnetic altered granites, hosts for bulk porphyry type mineralization. As we actually step out west at Sao Chico, which is all we're doing beyond the mine limits with surface drilling, it's beginning to look, we've got the very sort of interesting possibility that this is all going to join up.
Welcome to Crux Investor. First of all, thanks so much for watching this video. If you like it, give us a thumbs up and please leave us your comments below. It just helps us to understand the types of questions that you like us asking, would like us to ask, and indeed your feedback about the company and how we are doing. And if you haven't already done so, please click the button in the corner of the screen to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, for more videos like this, click the notification bell. We spoke earlier today to Mike Hodgson, who's the CEO of Serabi Gold. They're a AIM-listed junior gold explorer with assets in Brazil. We talk to them normally about their production and how that's going, and especially in this time of COVID-19. We do get a catch up about that. Seems to be going gangbusters, apparently, says Mike. But today they announced some exploration results, and we're intrigued to understand whether this is a segue away from their focus of Coringa, or if this was an as well scenario. So Mike tells us a little bit about that and what his hopes are and what the numbers tell us. So take a look in the description below for any of the topics discussed, anything interesting in particular, click on the relevant timestamp and that will take you to that part of the video. Enjoy what Mike has to say. Hey Mike, how you doing, sir?
Very well, thank you. Nice to see you, Matt.
Yep, good to see you. You bearing up still?
Yes, we're sort of running our operations remotely. We have daily calls, probably 2 or 3 calls a day. You know, thank God for Zoom and Skype and WhatsApp and anything else.
It's a game changer. It's a game changer. But look, we've seen your press release, and I was interested because it's very different from what you normally talk about, and I wanted to kind of get into it because normally we have this conversation about production, productivity, and you know what's happening on site. But this is more around exploration at site almost. So, but let's kick off first. I do need that usual update. So what is happening? Last month you had a bumper month. Have you been able to recreate that in April?
Absolutely, we have. We've had another great month. It's really been superb. We haven't quite finalised the numbers yet, but they're going to be close to 3,500 ounces. So great way to start Q2, and we still hope that we're going to be north of 9,000 ounces for the quarter, which in the circumstances is absolutely fabulous. The guys at site are working really well. We've managed to we've got some testing of some tests, and we're managing to work out a system of actually rotating about 10 people a week at the moment. So we test people, we bring those 10 people to site. They're in a separate part of the camp, which is quarantine. They spend sort of 8 days there being quarantined, and as long as the doctor's happy with them and they're all temperature tested, etc., they're all fine. They get integrated into the workforce. That said, the guys at site have been brilliant. I mean, they normally work either a 30-15 roster, and some of those guys have been there 60 days now, and they don't want to leave. They keep going, and we're paying them a little bit of a bonus to keep the enthusiasm going and the motivation, and it's really showing you the numbers. I mean, the health and safety stats before anyone gets alarmed are fine, absolutely good, and the production stats are absolutely wonderful. So you know, yeah, I'm just delighted the way the operation's going at the moment.
Okay, interesting. And what about the ore sorter? You'd kind of done some preliminary tests, and you gave us some initial feedback as to what it's been able to do. Again, is that still performing as expected?
That thing's absolutely singing. I haven't got the stats for April yet, but in March, it was upgrading. I think just loosely in March, just to give you a bit of an idea. We passed about 2,500 tons at a grade of around 3, and it screened out a little over 300 tons at a grade of 21, and the rest was 2,200 tons, the balance, at a grade of 0.7. So it absolutely scavenged all this high-grade gold. Now, through April, our Palito grades have actually gone. The normal Palito grades, because we're only putting on the Palito part of the deposit at the moment, the Palito grades, which is, Palito generates about 50% of our raw feed, let's say. The grades were normally about sort of 6.5 grams per ton, 7, and we basically passing about 9 grams. So, you know, overall, it's meaning, if you combine that with the Sao Chico ore as well, which doesn't get ore sorted, it's giving our feed grade going to the plant about a 1 gram per ton uplift. Now, 1 gram might not sound a lot, but if your feed grade 7 and it's going to 8, 8.5, big difference. So it's brilliant. It's working really well. So yeah, I'm looking forward. I mean, I haven't quite got them yet, but I think there'll be a very significant contribution and another healthy increase in the Palito feed grade through April. That's why we're getting these extra ounces. That's where it's coming from. It's just say sort of taking waste out of the feed before it goes to the plant and using up that plant capacity with better quality material. That's the key.
Okay, so that's great. I mean, I guess we'll get a proper update from you maybe, later this month, if you can. I want to talk about this press release, though. There's some really nice numbers in here, but I think the bigger story in here is that you're putting money towards exploration, which you haven't done for some time. So, because obviously you're throwing off cash now. So, tell me what you're aiming to do. What was the plan here?
Well, just to touch on your point there about that. I mean, ever since we put Palito back in production in 2014 and we acquired Sao Chico a year or so later and then put that into production as well, we raised just enough money to do that and not quite enough. And we went to Sprott, who are a great lender, and we borrowed money off Sprott twice, 8 million, which we paid off, and 8 again, which we've only got 2 million left to pay on that, and that'll be gone by the end of June. So we basically borrowed $60 million of debt and paid it off out of cash flow. So we've never had money for exploration, really. We've just been servicing and paying off debt. So the opportunity, so exploration was pretty much parked, bar, immediate mine site, head frame exploration, as I like to call it, in around Palito and Sao Chico. But obviously what we did in 2018, we did do a financing, we raised over $20 million, and we did set aside a chunk of money for exploration for the first time in about 5 years. So it was great. But perhaps first I'll talk about the Sao Chico exploration results, which is part of that head frame exploration I've just talked about.
Yeah.
And that is the ongoing program. We have done a couple of releases already this year. It's the continued step out drilling of the Sao Chico extension westerly, which we're doing. And I think if one looks at the images in the press release, it's getting very interesting that as we actually step out west at Sao Chico, which is all we're doing beyond the mine limits with surface drilling, we are working our way towards a geophysical anomaly, which is called Cicada, which we've also been drilling. And what the compelling thing here is, it's beginning to look, we've got the very sort of interesting possibility that this is all going to join up. And this gives us, so essentially what we're drilling is the gap between Sao Chico and this geophysical anomaly called Cicada.
Okay, so let's look at that. There's a couple of diagrams in the press release. Do you mind sort of talking me through those?
Well, if we look here, we can see the Sao Chico deposit. You can see the mine limits down there in the sort of the southeast corner, and that's what we've been mining over the last few years. It's open to the southeast, which is the area called Highway. We've got no holes in this release on that area at the moment. We are going to go back there, but we've been focusing on the area to the west. And you can see there, I know it's not exactly shown on the scale, Bob, you can see we've got sort of 6 or 7 holes now in that area beyond the western limit of the mine area, and going towards that lake area. Now we've got some really nice intersections in there, mineable grades, mineable widths. And of course, what's beginning to interest us is at the same time with this release, we've got our first results from the Cicada anomaly. Now this was those sort of colored areas you see to the west there, they're all terrestrial geophysical anomalies that we obtained from a survey last year, and we actually started drilling at the beginning of this year. We've got our first results, and we're drilling not with core drilling here, we're drilling with what's RC drilling. So it's much coarser drilling where you just collect rock chips. You don't get such an accurate sample, but it's kind of discovery drilling. But there's enough there for us to get pretty excited about. We've got 3 meters at 2 grams, including 1 at over 5, which is very, very gold bearing. And the interesting point is, it's bang on projection of the Sao Chico ore zone. And as we're moving west, it's become quite possible for us that these things might all join together, which is really very interesting. So now if we look at that in terms of the long section, so now we can see long section wise, the mine on the right hand side, you can see all the levels in blue. You can see the areas we've been mining and are mining in yellow, and you can see where we're drilling all around the edges. Obviously to the west, sort of to the east. At depth, we've still got some very nice intersections right down there at the bottom, so showing the mine just going down and down and down. But we're trying to drill that area to the west of the mine, the information gap, as I call it, between Sao Chico and Cicada, that terrestrial geophysics anomaly, which we've just actually started drilling and got those hits up at the top. So we've got a nice area of about 600, 700, 800 meters there to fill in, and we're just stepping along, going west time and time and time. The last intersections we actually got were not so wide, but the structure was still going strong, and it was still over a gram. But you can see in there, we're picking up some really nice numbers. We've got over 5 meters at 12 grams, and another sort of 12 gram in there. So, and right at the top there, we've got nearly 2 meters at 28 grams per ton. So some really nice numbers, and a big area to obviously justify extending that mine west as we go. And we'll just continue drilling that gap all the way to Cicada. And if this thing joins up, we're sitting on some pretty nice resource growth at Sao Chico. Okay, so here we have the results of that airborne geophysics survey with the geochemistry superimposed. So when we first received this, we had this. We were pretty excited about this, because there we have the Palito mine at the top, where our plant and Palito deposit is, and Sao Chico down there in the southwest corner. And we never in a moment did we think we'd have this huge geophysical magnetic anomalous high with all those little black areas. They're the electromagnetic anomalies, which is another type of geophysics, and they are usually an indicator of massive sulfide. So you can see there's a chain of them that sit on the flanks of that big magnetic high, and it's a huge feature, and it obviously makes us think that is a different rock type, a favorable rock type for sulfide mineralization, and we obviously have those black dots, the electromagnetic highs going along with it. So what we've done, we've actually superimposed soil geochemistry over the top, and hey ho, we've got a nice coincidental copper anomaly as well. So the plan now is to hone in on those anomalies and actually see if we get a coincidental gold anomaly. And you can see down there on the Cinderella shear, we do. And that's got a really nice series of contiguous gold anomalies there. So that's really excellent. And what we're going to do there is do even tighter lines, like closer space sampling, and see if we can join all those, if they join up and actually really have a nice continuity of the anomaly there and make those drill ready. But probably the two that really excite us now is this one area called Calico and Jura, which are over at the west end. Really looking at the close-up at Calico and Jura, this is an area where we've actually already taken the copper soil samples that were anomalous and reassayed them for gold, and got some really terrific results. And you can see there at Calico, we've got a series of really high-grade 30 part per billion gold anomalies, soil anomalies. And they, interestingly enough, I look at that and I see the orientation of those anomalies, and they are exactly the same orientation strike, as we call it, as the Palito deposit. So I think that's going to be a big stack of veins, just like Palito, and I'm sure that's what that's going to end up being. The geology is very similar, so it really does look like a Palito copy as so far at this stage from a geochemical anomaly viewpoint. Only 5Ks from Palito, so pretty easy to actually start something there and truck it up to the Palito plant. That's not going to be an issue. And to the south there, we've got this one called Jura. Now, this one probably is even more exciting because it has all the components that you would want to see for some type of scalable deposit. It's over 1 kilometer in diameter. It's got coincidental copper, gold, and other elements like molybdenum, tellurium, bismuth, multi-elements that you would actually find in a porphyry type deposit. And we already know that the rocks that we have are ripe for that. So there's one that these are the two we actually want to sort of move forward with and get closer space sampling on and see if we can tighten these up, and all being well, drill them in Q4 and see what we can find there. It's looking very much like a Palito. The rocks are the same. It's only 5 kilometers from Palito, so it's pretty exciting. Okay, so what I'm hearing is you're very excited. I can hear that, and you know how you're going to tackle it. I guess people, shareholders and people looking at you fresh are going to be like, well,
Is this going to distract you from the work that you're going to do at Coringa?
I've been asked that a few times from investors in the past, and obviously, I suppose it's a nice problem to have. We've got such good organic growth upside in our backyard, and we look. Coringa is a very advanced, established, as you quite rightly say, it's a Palito lookalike, and it's going to do very nicely. Thank you. I think what these results show us is how important organic growth is as well. We can actually add ounces in our own backyard very cheaply. We can actually find satellite deposits, which are all sort of built, dovetail into our sort of plant expansion plans, whether they be at Palito or Sao Chico. So it's important to realize the potential in and around our two producing areas to see where we're going to do our plant expansion, which obviously we need to do at some point in time. And this is what it's about. I suppose I would like to add, though, that when you see something so big on the geochemical anomalies and the geophysical anomalies like this, we are mining high-grade veins at Palito, at Sao Chico, and will be at Coringa. But the scale of these anomalies, the size of them, and the rock types they're in, do look very similar to what the Anglo-Americans of the world were looking at in Mato Grosso State to the south. And not that we're going to jump into bed with Anglo-American or RTZ or any major. We've had several visits at site about these guys wanting to come and look at what we've got. They're very excited about the potential. These big magnetic anomalies are indicative of magnetic altered granites, which are usually hosts for bulk porphyry type mineralization. And so we're pretty excited about. We might have some real scale in our own backyard. So, all we can do now is work our way through the process, prove the viability.
That's kind of interesting to me. So, obviously, you've been used to chasing high-grade veins, and you're good at it. You've been able to do it economically, and obviously throwing off cash at the moment. But you're now talking the language of a different type of opportunity. You're talking about bulk, I presume, therefore more homogeneous, low-grade type activity. Are you equipped or set up to deal with that?
Well, it's a fair bit of water got to flow under the bridge first.
Of course.
Obviously, I think one of the biggest challenges in the region is power, and that's why probably high-grade veins work in this part of the world at the moment. But there's, I think, as every day passes in this part of Brazil, the road improvement, the infrastructure improvements happening. We've got Tanzania on the doorstep as well. I think there's a lot of will to actually improve the power situation in the region, and certainly we can look at that. It does depend on the scale, but certainly one thing that we want to do is address our cost profile, and adding in some open pit production one day with our sort of high grade vein mining is our wish. That's our wish, and if we can do it organically, all the better. All the better.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, look, Mike. It sounds like things are going well. You're coping with COVID-19 and keeping the numbers flowing, which is, I guess, should excite the market, because I think others are struggling somewhat there. Should we expect more of the same for Q2, or is it just see how it goes? Because what's happening in country is, I guess, where I'm getting to.
Well, Brazil is struggling. There's no denying that. We are remaining very isolated from what's actually happening outside. People only need to read the news and see. There's a lot, particularly in the north of Brazil. They haven't got the infrastructure, the medical infrastructure that we enjoy in Europe or the US. So it certainly is challenging. What we're doing, we think we found a formula for rotating the workforce. The workforce have become very, very flexible. They're working much longer periods of time than they normally would work. And as long as that will stays, we think we can find a way through of having a good Q2. And now we think we can have a fairly reasonable Q3. We might not make the guidance numbers that we said at the beginning of the year, but I think if we got 90% of it, no one's going to complain. And to be perfectly honest, with the gold price that we've got, 9,500 ounces of reais an ounce, and certainly making 3,000 ounce plus months, our cash flow is going to be in pretty good shape.
And is the exchange working in your favour?
Very much so. Very much so. No, it's huge. I mean, the exchange rate today is it's 5.3, 5.4 to the dollar.
Wow.
You know, our budgets were done at 370. So it's that's what I'm saying. Costs 85% in reais, and exchange rate 9,500 reais an ounce. 2 months ago it was 6,000. It's a great time to be a producer in Brazil. From an economic perspective.
Certainly is. Well, look, Mike, thanks very much for that update. It's just your story we quite like, and we follow avidly, because I think the potential is there, and I think with maybe exploring the possibility of adding bulk to this high grade story could be very interesting for you. So keep us up to date with how things are going on. I guess it's very fluid at the moment, so appreciate the phone call.
Many thanks.